Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and it's that time once again for me to review some Halloweenish materials on the weekends. Yep. So, to start things off, reviewing Halloweenish materials on the weekends, I am now about to review, and well, because you read the title, you know what this is, a very early silent film, and this just so happens to be the first ever film adaptation of the story of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, bringing the story that Mary Shelley wrote to life on screen, and with it, the monster himself, Frankenstein's creation, in all of its glory and so on. Yeah, and hard to believe because, nowadays, a lot of people, when you think about Frankenstein, well, obviously Boris Karloff comes to mind, or any other Frankenstein film adaptation you've seen, like the one that Kenneth Branagh did, or maybe, say, on television, like, well, obviously, you would think of, say, The Munsters. Herman is a Frankenstein monster, and so on. Yeah, just, you get my point. And, this silent film, which being the first ever film adaptation of Frankenstein, and yes, because I am now reviewing 1910's Frankenstein. So, as I was about to say, point being is that it seems as though that, yeah, a lot of people don't really think of this, and it's kind of forgotten and such. But, this is history. This is history, the fact that, this is, in fact, the first ever film adaptation of anything Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's true. I'm sure some of you probably are aware of this, and not to mention, you can easily find it on social media, in the case of YouTube, yeah. But yeah, and for me, because with the first things I have to say about 1910's Frankenstein, and having to fully watch it in all of its glory. And again, this being one of those early silent films where, back then, those early silent films would be up to, say, 10 to 12, 13 minutes. And in the case of this, yeah. So for this being up to, say, to 10, 12, 13 minutes, etc., yeah, I mean, there's no doubt, of course, that back then, and how it was done, I mean, yeah, that's early film history for you, and, yeah, obviously, this wouldn't be as, say, I guess, powerful as, say, the Boris Karloff Frankenstein film from 1931, or any other Frankenstein adaptation, but again, we have to respect stuff like this that came before others that would become successful and so on, yeah, because this is where it all began, so, yeah. So, having to see what it's like in all of its glory from beginning to end, how it was done, getting to experience and watch some certain old silent films back then in the early 1900s and such is very interesting, how they were done compared to movies later on in the decades, and when the silent era was no more, and, yeah, just, with the silent film performances of those that were a part of this, and the direction it took, the style, and on account of the monster itself, yeah, it was pretty interesting. I enjoyed this, of course, for what it is, being very respectful to the old films of the 19th century, and where, they were in, of course, black and white, they were silent films, and those early ones, they weren't full-length feature films, so, yeah. But anyways, but yeah, just overall, it's pretty good, and I would recommend it, of course, any of you, of course, who are big fans of the story of Frankenstein, have seen plenty of other Frankenstein films, maybe you haven't come across this, but I, of course, would recommend it. Anyways, okay, so with the first things I've had to say about 1910's Frankenstein now out of the way, now as always, for me, read the description / the story. Frankenstein, a young medical student trying to create the perfect human being, creates a mishappen monster, if I said that right, yeah, made ill by what he has done. Frankenstein is comforted, by his fiancée. But on his wedding night, he is visited by the monster that he has ever so created and would soon regret creating. Didn't go as planned, exactly. All right, so before I dive in / break down Frankenstein itself from 1910, a few fun facts and background history, etc. I just, want to go ahead and share and get out of the way. So, yeah. Interestingly, is that 1910's Frankenstein was produced and released 92 years after the original novel Mary Shelley wrote was published. And it was also produced and released 59 years after Shelley's passing. Interesting. And also, prior to the film's rediscovery, because, yeah, that's the thing, because at the time, it was considered to be a lost film, and no copies of it were known to exist. So, yeah, point being is that, yeah, there was a time that it was considered lost. However, an original nitrid, if I said that right, print, it finally turned up in Wisconsin in the mid-1970s. So, thankfully, it was one of those early silent films that was recovered. And a good thing, too, because, again, for this being the first ever film adaptation of Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, that's something. And I was about to say, because prior to the film's rediscovery, only a few images of whom portrays the monster were known to exist. And interestingly, whom portrayed the monster looks a lot younger in the film than he does in the photographs. Interesting. Okay. All right, so I just wanted to share that, so, all right. And by the way, because also, okay, so, yeah, I'll mention that okay, there's one other thing, but I'll talk about once I get there, so, okay. So, now, diving / breaking down the silent film of Frankenstein itself. Well, Frankenstein himself being played by the late Augustus Phillips, attending to college. Yeah, he's a college student and experiments with alchemy, and mixes chemicals in a giant vat to create a perfect human being, because his obsession and passion with human life and bringing a being back to life and such. And by studying, and 2 years would pass, and up to when he would then make some progress. And a shocking birth, because, the experiment, of course, goes horribly wrong, as we would expect, and the vat produces a hideous, ghostly, abronant, if I said that right, monster. And again, you know me sometimes with mispronouncing, etc. But and the creation of the monster in this is pretty interesting. And just to go ahead and mention him, because the monster, Frankenstein's creation, being played by the late Charles Ogle, if I said that right, And interesting fact about and I was going to mention this, about the creation of Frankenstein and the monster, and in the trivia, because apparently this is one of the only Frankenstein films where the monster is truly created. And, well, because, all of the Frankenstein films, that followed assembled body parts from various corpses to make the monster, as we all know. But in this film, however, Frankenstein uses chemicals and potions to create the monster. And the creation scene, well, was made by filming a monster dummy burning and then playing the footage backwards. So, that's pretty interesting. And I gotta say, because, the creation scene, we're seeing the monster come to life was pretty interesting. Even nowadays, the later Frankenstein films and how they do that, the total opposite of what the first movie adaptation of Frankenstein did. Pretty interesting. It was pretty cool, because, back then, the achievement of, pure and simple, them reversing the footage and just, giving that illusion that, because it's coming to life, it's being burned, with it burning, but it's, it's forming and all that. You get what I'm saying? Just, pretty impressive. Anyways, So yeah, and just yeah, again, that scene alone, because with the creation, the birth of the monster is pretty cool, and I can imagine back then audiences in 1910 probably creeped out by it. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, with the creation slash birth scene happening, well, yeah, Frankenstein's imminent regret, yeah, because being horrified, it doesn't take him too long to be horrified by his creation. And, well, Frankenstein, he passes out, and he is later found and revived by a servant who helps him return home. Yeah, because we don't even know his name, and he's not even credited, so just, yeah, someone who is Frankenstein's servant. Anyways, yeah, so then later on, and when Dr. Frankenstein would return home, reuniting with his soon-to-be wife, which of course being Elizabeth, and Elizabeth being played by the late Mary Fuller. Yeah, so a happy reunion between both of them, and yeah, of course, they are soon to be married, and yeah. The monster's mirror confrontation. Yeah, well, what would happen next? And after both Frankenstein and Elizabeth, they reunite, a jealous act. The monster, who has followed Frankenstein home, becomes insanely jealous of his creator's fiancée, Elizabeth, and during a confrontation, the monster snatches a rose from Frankenstein that Elizabeth had given to him. Jeez. You know, because, you know, with what's going through the monster's mind, is just, it's hard to tell, because it just out of nowhere for him, and in the case of this, yeah. And then, yeah, a horrifying reflection where in the ensuing struggle, the monster, he looks up and sees its own horrifying reflection, his hideous, in the mirror, right in front of his eyes. And yeah, in a large mirror, and, appalled and terrified. Yeah, that's what's going through him. And the creature, he flees. He's terrified of his own self. And the metaphysically ending, if I might have mispronounced that, but again, you know me sometimes, yeah. Well, the monster's final appearance. Well, on Frankenstein's wedding night, the monster returns and goes to the bride's room, and causing her to shriek and faint. Yeah, obviously. And the monster, whom then enters the main room and overpowers Frankenstein before leaving. And, well, then after that, because the fading away, this was pretty interesting, because, yeah, the monster is then later seen standing in front of the mirror, again, seeing his hideous face, and where the monster's body gradually fades away, and all that's left is his reflection. Pretty interesting with what happens here in the first Frankenstein film adaptation, and how it would lead to the monster's demise, yeah. And Frankenstein's transformation, because, yeah, then Frankenstein, he enters the room and sees the monster's reflection only, yeah. By this point, the monster, he's fade away, and he in the mirror is all that's left. And, symbolizing that the monster was a manifestation of Frankenstein's own evil thoughts. Yeah, because the evil consumed him, and when he would then begin to create the monster, and not a perfect human being. Yeah, maybe he should have done that in the first place. And, yeah, and as Frankenstein's love for his fiancée reasserts his better nature, rightfully so, the monster's image also fades. Yep. And Frankenstein, he sees his normal reflection, yeah, because, well, the monster's reflection in the way of his reflection? No, yeah, that's no more of that. He sees himself, and yeah. And with love triumphing, the film, it ends with Frankenstein and his bride embracing, showing that love has overcome the evil creation. Rightfully so, yeah. Love conquers all in a good way. Yeah. Evil loses and love happily ever after, all that. Just like in a fairy tale. Anyways, but yeah. And for this being up to 10 to 12, 13 minutes, it's, besides that, it's, it was still pretty good and entertaining, for this being the first ever Frankenstein film adaptation ever. And, yeah, and also because on account of the music. Now, obviously, when it comes to the early silent films, I mean, any silent film during those early decades of films, yeah, because there would always be every different piece of music and score. And most of the time, when it comes to the early silent films that are up to, say, 10, 12 minutes, etc., they would just have, say, like an organ or a piano. So, yeah. And with 1910's Frankenstein, and with when I watched it, because, yeah, it only contained a piano. So, but, yeah, I recognized some of those keys of music, and pretty well done. I mean, obviously, when it comes to the music in any early silent film, it has to be really good. And yeah, in the case of 1910's Frankenstein, pretty good. Yeah, just, overall, 1910's Frankenstein, the first ever film adaptation of Frankenstein, it's amazing. Knowing that this was, for a while, once considered lost, but in the mid-1970s, it was rediscovered, saved, and yeah, from there on, just, yeah. Because, yeah, imagine that. If it had been lost forever, it's great to see. Everything from beginning to end, from the story, how the first ever Frankenstein film adaptation was brought to life, the creation of the monster, the cast of characters, their silent performances, the piano, music, all of that, and the look and design of the monster himself. Pretty interesting, pretty cool. Just everything about 1910's Frankenstein, excellent for what it is, and again, the first ever Frankenstein film adaptation. Just what more do I have to say? And I'm giving 1910's Frankenstein, oh, why not? 10 out of 10 stars. Yes, 10 out of 10 stars for 1910's silent film / the first ever film adaptation of Frankenstein. And what about you guys? What did you think of the 1910 silent film of Frankenstein, the first ever film adaptation of Frankenstein? When did you discover this? Were you aware of this? And obviously, I don't know, it depends. Like, obviously, you had seen other Frankenstein films before you came across this. When did you first discover this, and what were your first thoughts when you finally watched it? And for any of you who, love to watch some old, silent films back in those days, and on account of this, favorite moments, and with the music, the performances, the look and design of the monster, and what you thought of the birth / creation of Frankenstein's monster itself. Yeah, just overall, what do you think of the 1910 version of Frankenstein? And with what all I've had to say, my review, and yeah, what did you think of my review? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. And so guys, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of the 1910 version of Frankenstein, the first ever film adaptation of Frankenstein. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I will see you guys in the next video / review. And, well, reviewing Halloweenish materials on the weekends has just begun. Stay tuned for more. Take care, and peace out. Grrr.